In the days after her mother's passing, Ariella walked the wilderness as one walks through a dream that refuses to end. The earth beneath her feet was cracked and thirsty. The sky hung low, bruised with fading light. And she moved like a shadow that had forgotten the body it once belonged to. She avoided the roads. She avoided the villages. She avoided the living. For she believed to things with unshakable certainty that she was safer alone, and that others were safer from her. Nights found her curled inside caves where the wind moaned like grieving spirits. Ruins became her shelter. Broken stones, fallen pillars, remnants of forgotten kingdoms. She slept lightly, as if rest itself were a luxury she no longer deserved. And always, there was the whisper, a voice soft as breath on the back of her neck. A voice she refused to acknowledge. Ariella. She clenched her jaw. She walked faster. She buried the sound beneath the noise of her own heartbeat. Not now, not ever. I will not listen. The road narrowed between two jagged cliffs. Ariella sensed them before she saw them. Bandits, hungry for coin, or blood, or both. They stepped from the shadows with blades drawn, grinning like wolves who believed they had cornered a lamb. Easy now, girl, hand over what you carry. Ariella lowered her hood. Her eyes were calm, her voice barely above a whisper. Leave, please. They laughed. They did not leave. The first man lunged. What followed was not a battle. It was a storm. Ariella moved with terrifying precision. Strength that should not have belonged to someone her size. Speed that blurred the edges of her form. Bones cracked. Steel rang. Dust rose in violent spirals. When the last bandit fell groaning into the dirt, Ariella stood trembling, not from fear, but from shame. I never wanted this. I never wanted any of this. She wiped the blood from her hands as if trying to erase the truth of herself. By dusk she reached a small town, little more than wooden homes, a well, and a single dirt road. She expected the usual: fear, suspicion, doors closing, mothers pulling children away. Instead, a man at the well offered her water with a cautious smile. A woman pointed her toward a shaded place to rest. A little girl tugged her sleeve and placed a piece of warm bread in her hand. For you. A grandmother approached, leaning on a carved staff. Forgive our smallness, traveler. We have little, but what we have, we share. Ariella froze. Something unfamiliar stirred in her chest. Fragile, trembling. What is this feeling? Why does it hurt and heal at the same time? For the first time in years, she felt welcome. That evening, the villagers gathered at a simple stone altar. No idols, no carved faces. Only a flame, a bowl of grain, and voices lifted in psalm. Ariella watched from the shadows. Their peace unsettled her. Their joy confused her. Their unity felt like a language she had forgotten how to speak. She noticed how they prayed, not to many gods, but to one, the Creator, the breath giver, the living God, and slowly she began to associate their kindness with him. Later, by the fire, Ariella approached the grandmother. Who is this God you worship? The grandmother smiled as though she had been waiting for the question. He is the God of Adam, the maker of all things, the whisperer who calls to the lost, the one who loves. Ariella's breath caught. The whisperer. She looked away quickly. I don't believe in such things. But the seed was planted, and seeds do not ask permission to grow. Night fell like a curtain of ink. Then, screams. Cloaked cultists poured into the streets, carrying Asherah poles and idols carved with twisted faces. They chanted in a tongue that tasted like ash. They seized villagers for sacrifice, dark arts taught by the true sun, the deceiver of nations. Ariella ran toward the chaos. She fought with everything she had: fists, fury, desperation. She tried to reach the little girl. She tried to shield the grandmother. But there were too many. She watched people she cared for fall. She watched hope bleed into the dirt. Her heart broke in ways no blade could match. Ariella, staggered, bleeding, surrounded, her vision blurred, her strength waned. A cult priest raised a blade over her, dark magic crackling like black lightning. If this is my end, let me fall standing. She lifted her fists one last time. A shadow fell across her. A giant stepped between her and death, silent, hooded, face hidden. His presence was like a mountain wrapped in night. He moved with disciplined fury, each strike precise, righteous, devastating. Cultists fell like wheat before a scythe. Dark magic shattered against him like glass. Ariella watched in awe. He was everything she was not: controlled, righteous, purposeful. When the last cultist collapsed, the giant turned to her. Ariella, trembling, whispered, "Who are you?" He said nothing. The wind shifted, the flames flickered,